Hey YouTube, welcome back to this channel. I have a new video, first in a very long time. Today I'm going to be showing you my deck profile from this past Los Angeles Regionals that took place last weekend on June 8th. I took a 60 card branded Chimera deck list to the tournament and I finished 6th place overall within the top 8. I wanted to provide this in-depth deck profile to go over more of the decision-making process and the individual tech choices of this deck, and hope that it will be helpful to you if you are a branded or a Chimera player. For those of you who are here from the shorter video I uploaded on Hakuna My Data's channel, welcome. I hope you like the video enough that you want to stick around. And yeah, let's jump right into it and I'll show you the 60 card branded Chimera deck that I brought to the LA Regionals. Alrighty, so let's hop into the main deck here and we'll get started with this deck profile. So the first thing I want to address is that the fact that this is a 60 card deck. So I'd like to take a few minutes here just to talk about why a 60 card deck. So basically the main reason for having a 60 card deck is the fact that this is a branded, this is a Chimera deck first and foremost, and it's a branded deck second. If you have a Chimera deck, you basically find that, as with all engines in modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, each Chimera card pulls all the rest of the Chimera cards. You have a Codal, if you have a Mirror Sword Knight, if you have a Gazelle, or if you have a Berfmet. As long as you have one, you have all of them. The problem is hand diversity. If you have 2 copies of any of the Chimera cards, you don't have any more options or more lines than you had if you had a single one. Similarly, if you had 3 copies of the Chimera cards. So the main reason for wanting to run a 60 card deck is wanting to diversify my opening hands, because opening multiples of Chimera cards are frankly really bad, but you want to make sure you have 3 copies of every Chimera card, because Chimera is really good in the long-term grind, being able to make the same repetitive combo over and over again, eventually overwhelming your opponent in card advantage. In order to have that advantage, you need 3 of each copy, but in order to have a lot of options in your opening hand, you need hand diversity, which is why I opted for 60. So that's the long and short of it. So to that end, I have the Chimera cards, obviously. I play 3 Mirror Sword Knight, 3 Cornfield Codal, 3 Gazelle, and I actually play 3 Big Wing Berfmet. So I know this is a little controversial in the Chimera community. Most people play only 2 Big Wing Berfmet because they don't want to brick on this card. I am a big believer in having 3 Big Wing Berfmet. Obviously, there's the opportunity or the chance of you bricking on this card. But basically, if you resolve the main Chimera combo, you're going to go through 2 Big Wing Berfmets minimally. One on your turn and one on your opponent's turn when you use Mirror Sword Knight. And so, for the branded Chimera deck, if you have any kind of situation where you need to grind with the Chimera cards, you're really going to want access to this third Berfmet. As well, with the Despia cards, you have a lot of ways to get a body on the field without your normal summon, so this is a live tribute summon, something that you can take advantage of. For the remainder of the monsters, I play 1 Tau, which is pretty standard if you play the Patchwork engine, which you'll see that I do, and 1 Nightmare Apprentice. This is pretty unstandard because I know a lot of people are playing 3 Nightmare Apprentice because this card is fantastic for the Chimera cards, and I totally agree with that as well. The main reason I'm playing just 1 Nightmare Apprentice is because in the branded Chimera deck specifically, you can't use this to make link plays such as SP Little Knight, or synchro plays into Chaos Angel, or this adds no utility as a rank 6 toolbox. For the branded Chimera deck specifically, you can only use this as fusion material. And if you look at it from that perspective, this is the worst card out of all of these other starters because it costs you to discard. The second reason that I'm only playing 1 Nightmare Apprentice is because this card is really bad going second into an Appaloosa. Since I'm playing no hand traps in this deck, as you'll see later, I start every duel going second, assuming I'm playing versus an Appaloosa. And this does absolutely nothing to solve that problem. So in this deck specifically, I opted to play more power spells, and that means I had to cut down on my consistency cards, such as Nightmare Apprentice. And so that's the main reason I'm only playing 1 copy of this. For the rest of the Chimera cards, I'm playing 3 Chimera Fusion as well. Again, 3 copies of everything to maximize the advantage you can get in the deep grind, but 60 cards so you can minimize seeing too many of them in your opening hand. As well, I play the Patchwork engine. I play a 3-2-2 ratio. That's Edgem Chain, Fight for Patchwork, and Polymerization. I think this is basically essential in the deck. I'm not going to talk too much about why. Anyone who plays this deck knows just how good the Patchwork engine is. The things I will talk about, though, are the ratios. I do see a lot of people playing 3 Fright for Patchwork as well as 3 Edgem Chain, or they play a ratio of 2-3-2. I think all are valid, and I personally prefer having more access to Chain. As well, you'll see that I play Magnum the Reliever, which lets this engine sort of cycle over multiple turns if you need it. So yeah, I think all are generally valid. I do think you have to play the Patchwork engine. This is another opportunity to talk about why 60 cards as well. I find that when I was at 40 cards, although I don't have the math to back this up, I found when I was at 40 cards, I did tend to see multiple pieces of the Patchwork engine in my opening hand. If you see one piece of Patchwork engine, unless it's polymerization, you're generally really happy. If you see 2 or more, those cards are almost always dead. You never needed them. And so again, this is to maximize the hand diversity and reduce the number of pieces you can open in this engine. Now moving on to the Despia cards. I play a huge Despia package in this deck. And the reason, or the logic behind it, is that the Despia cards and the branded cards are supposed to add a lot of power and ceiling to the Chimera cards. They add all the ability to extend and break boards, whereas the Chimera cards raise the overall floor of the deck. So you're going to be able to make plays with 1-card starters that branded doesn't have unless it's exactly branded fusion that doesn't get ashed. However, the end board of the Chimera deck is pretty weak overall, so you want to supplement it with all the extra extension you get from the branded cards. And also the branded cards are really good at going second into a board. To that end, the Despia cards I'm playing are 3 Aluber, 1 Tragedy, 1 Adlib. For the Fallen of Albaz cards, I'm playing 2 Fallen of Albaz. I'm also playing 1 Spriggan's Kit, which you can bridge into via the Big Wing Berfomet. Since it searches a level 4 beast, you can search the Spriggan's Kit. In the standard branded Chimera deck that's only 40, it's very rare that you can get the Spriggan's Kit out onto the field the same turn you search it, because you've already consumed your normal summon on the Chimera cards. However, in this deck, I also play supplemental engines such as Blazing Cartesia, who can be that additional engine end piece that if you fuse, for example, for Grand Guignol, you can send a Fallen of Albaz fusion monster to the graveyard and then special summon Kit, getting access to branded fusion if you've already wasted your normal summon on the Chimera cards. Then for the branded spell traps, I play a pretty standard 3 opening, 3 fusion, branded fusion, 3 fusion deployment, and 1 branded in red. I want to make a comment here as well. So basically with the Chimera cards, if you played them for any amount of time, you basically know that if you're not able to fuse, aka if you don't have spell cards that do fusions, you can't really do anything with the Chimera cards. And in order to get spell cards that let you fuse, you have to use your normal summon in the Chimera deck, unless you specifically open Fight for Patchwork pieces or a Chimera fusion in your opening hand. The nice thing about the branded engine is all of these spells, which are core engine pieces, allow you to fuse without using your normal summon. Fusion deployment getting you to Blazing Cartesia, branded fusion obviously being branded fusion, branded opening getting you there as well. In addition, the Despia cards have some discard outlets. If you fusion deployment for Fallen of Albaz, you discard for cost, so you can get your edge and chain pieces out of your hand and get an alternative ways to fuse using these spells as well. And so this is one huge advantage of the Despia engine, that you can perform fusions without using your normal summon. Okay, there's one more thing I want to talk about with the Despia cards as well. So if you take away, if you look at this compared to a standard branded Chimera deck, the main pieces of cards that I'm adding that are different are these 4 right here. So I want to talk about them separately for a second. Okay, so moving that out of the way. Basically, the Tragedy, the Adlib, the Kit, and the Branded Red. These are really valuable on their own because they're basically adding additional utility and power to the branded Chimera end board. Letting you set up or supplement your end board with a Branded in red, or an Adlib in hand that allows you to fuse with a Chimera fusion using a Mirror Jade and the Adlib in any leftover body, allowing you to basically do double Mirror Jade on your opponent's turn. That adds an incredible amount of stickiness and layers of disruption to your opponent's board that, frankly, the Chimera deck on its own doesn't really have. The Chimera deck really just has a negate plus a Guardian Chimera plus whatever hand traps you draw into. So this is really good as a going first end board piece, but also it allows you to extend a lot more when you're going second and breaking boards. If you have to expend all of your monsters in hand and the Chimera fusions to get some sort of board presence, this gives you alternative ways to Guardian Chimera that don't waste the Chimera fusions in your hand. As well, this gives you a better board after you're done breaking a board, in case you have to pass back to your opponent because you're unable to kill them. It allows you to make either a Guardian Chimera play that lets you ad-lib into a Mirror Jade, Or alternatively, you can also access Masquerade with this Despia package. The standard branded Chimera deck doesn't have as much access to Masquerade. Masquerade is fantastic because it forces your opponent to play back into your board with a limited number of actions. And where the branded Chimera deck really shines is basically being able to outgrind your opponent. If you put a clock on the number of actions, you're absolutely going to win the grind game without a doubt. And so that's the reasoning behind these additional Despia cards, and they've really proven their worth over the long term. Now moving on to the non-engine, so I have some deep draw cards. I play 3 Allure of Darkness for deep draw, and 3 Pot of Desires. So I'd like to talk about the Pot of Desires specifically. This is a really stressful card to activate because the Banish 10 face down oftentimes banishes some key engine pieces and forces me to play really awkwardly because I sort of just forget what I have access to as I'm breaking a board or trying to set up. However, the only real replacement for Pot of Desires are other consistency cards, and the best one right now would be Nightmare Apprentice. And my main reasoning is that Pot of Desires beats Appaloosa because you can deep draw into power spells that can solve Appaloosa, and Nightmare Apprentice doesn't. And so simply because of the existence of Appaloosa, I'm playing Pot of Desires. If Appaloosa did not exist, I probably would cut these and play Nightmare Apprentice and just play an overall more consistent lower ceiling deck. On to some more of the non-engine, some of the power spells. I play 3 Thrust, 3 Talents. Again, I mentioned this in the other video. I typically would consider only playing 1 Talents, 3 Thrust, just as a thrust target. However, because of Appaloosa, this is one of the few cards in the deck that can solve it outright. And Talents just being generally pretty good overall into the deep draw component of this deck. As my one going first thrust target, I'm playing 1 Fusion Duplication. This is pretty standard for branded Despia at this stage. And finally, for my hard non-engine, I am playing 3 Droplet, 1 Called by the Grave. Not much to talk about here. Okay. Moving on to the extra deck. This is relatively standard for branded Chimera. I'm playing 1 copy of Chimera, the King of Phantom Beasts. I generally make this whenever I'm going first as a part of the end board of the Chimera part of the deck, which is basically part of the end board is that hand rip. I rarely make this card when I'm going second because it doesn't provide a lot of additional utility. I also play 1 Berfomet, the level 6 Fusion Fiend. This card is fantastic. I generally try to make this anytime I'm going second as a way to lead into a board and get some negates live. As well, I always try to make this going first if I can, so I can Foolish Burial a Tau using its effect, and then targeting a Mirror Sword Knight to Monster Reborn. So I can basically get access to my full Chimera engine without wasting my normal summon on the Mirror Sword Knight. I'd rather use my normal summon on a Gazelle to get an extra Chimera Fusion, or on the Despia side so I can get access to Branded Fusion. I also play 1 Chimera, the Illusion Beast. So this is Chimera King, as it's colloquially called. A lot of people talk about how crazy this card is because it's the OTK machine. And I generally never try to make this to cheese an OTK when I think I have complete control of the board state. What I mean is, if I think I'm going to win by turn 3 or turn 4 because I can outgrind my opponent, I'm not going to try to make this for a quick OTK because I feel like it's really vulnerable. Specifically, this card loses hard to Nibiru, but it also loses pretty hard to double interactions. When it hits the field, you usually have a targeting negate and a Mirror Sword Knight monster negate. But for example, if your opponent has Effect Veil or Promethean Princess, this card is a sitting duck. And if you waste your 2 Chimera Fusions, because it typically takes 2 Chimera Fusions to get to this guy, if this OTK doesn't go through, you don't have a way to Guardian Chimera on your opponent's turn. And so you lost a lot of your defense. However, the situations where I do make this card is when I'm in a losing game state and I don't think I can win in the deep grind. This card, which you can access via Albion or Lubellion from the Branded Fusion, you can very easily make a huge Chimera King with all of the illusions in the graveyard and banish zone, and basically sneak an OTK, sneak a win in a losing game state. And so this card itself can turn almost a guaranteed loss into a stolen win. And so for that reason, I think it's worthwhile to have in the deck, and it fills a purpose that other cards in the extra deck don't. 2 Guardian Chimeras, not much to say about this, best card in the deck. I'm also playing 1 Magnum the Reliever. Originally, I wasn't really sold on this card, but over the course of time, I've become really a supporter of this card. Basically, Magnum the Reliever adds a lot of additional pressure, and it's really good at spot removal for back row, which there are a ton of continuous spells and traps that are valuable in the game right now, or field spells. And so having this additional spot removal that doesn't go away after you summon it, like Guardian Chimera, adds a lot of additional pressure. In addition, one of the weakest engines in this deck is the Blazing Cartesia engine. On its own, it doesn't really do anything that forces your plays through, or it doesn't get you a ton of value. But when you have this card in your extra deck, Blazing Cartesia with anything actually has a good target, basically going into Magnum, which gives you a draw 1 and a pop 1. And so therefore, it adds a lot of value overall to the Fusion deployment package. For the Fallen of Albaz stuff, I'm playing 1 Rinbrum. This is the bridge that goes from Branded into Chimera, so that's essential. I'm playing 2 Mirror Jades. Typically, this deck does try to set up a Rinbrum and Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard, which fuses with your opponent's extra deck monster and gets you that second Mirror Jade. Playing 1 Albion and 2 Lubellions. Sorry, 1 Lubellion, 2 Albions. The second Albion does come up somewhat often because I have the 2 Mirror Jades, and I try to go for that double Mirror Jade play, as well with Ad Libitum. As well, it's nice to have additional ways to fuse, because in the grind game, sometimes you do need that third ability to fuse out of your graveyard. And then finally, for the Fusion deployment stuff, I'm playing 1 Grand Guignol, obviously for the Blazing Cartesia, 1 Quertus, Despia and Quertus, that the Grand Guignol can banish to tag into, and I'm also playing 1 Masquerade. Now, there's not much to say about this. This is probably the least valuable component of the extra deck, but they still serve their own purposes. The Grand Guignol being able to Foolish Burial Ad Libitum, or even the Nightmare Apprentice, so you can have access to that Illusion Engrave to continue getting card advantage. As well as going into these 2 Despian fusions, the Quertus and the Masquerade, which are both fiends, notably. So basically, your Fusion deployment and your Despia cards can get you to additional fiends that allow you to continue playing with your Chimera fusion. Importantly as well, Masquerade is a fiend that can Monster Reborn itself at quick speed. And so there are many situations if you have to go into a board somewhat awkwardly, let's say in a turn 3 situation, where you can just go ahead and play your Chimera fusion, Chainlink to Masquerade to Monster Reborn itself, and you can sneak a Guardian Chimera through on your opponent before they're able to remove the body. So that's pretty valuable on its own. Okay, and now let's move on to the side deck. So the side deck, as you can tell throughout the course of this main deck, I haven't played any hand traps. Obviously, I've gone for more of a power spell approach. And so in the side deck continues that vein where I'm basically playing board breakers. My board breakers of choice were in this tournament 3 Dark Ruler, 3 Evenly Matched, and these really overperformed over the course of this tournament. Hopefully soon I will be able to start talking about the match report, and I'll tell you basically where these really came into play. The logic behind using these specific board breakers, these board breakers punish decks that go really, really wide. One situation that happened pretty frequently is that if I went second and my opponent put up a mediocre board, I could blast right through it with all the power of the Branded Chimera engine. And so in games 2 and 3, when they were going first and trying again, they would basically use their engine and overextend as much as possible to try to make something that was harder to break through. And that's when Dark Ruler Evenly really shined, because I could basically just take away the majority of their overextension, blast through it anyway, and then put them on even fewer cards in hand for the follow-up. My going first card of choice was Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon. So there was one specific interaction or one specific scenario where I was planning for this card. This deck, in most of my testing, really struggled in one particular situation. That wasn't a Floodgate situation. It struggled specifically with the Snake Eyes deck in the turn 3 setup, where the Snake Eyes deck goes for the Zealantis OTK, that turn 3 push. It struggled pretty hard to survive that, and if this deck was able to push a Snake Eyes matchup to turn 4 or turn 5, it was almost always guaranteed to win in the deep grind, but surviving that turn 3 push was incredibly challenging. And so the idea behind Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon is that it acts as removal for link material because it sends them to the grave. And it also Book of Moons all the remaining monsters on the field so that they can't continue link climbing. It fit that niche. I didn't actually, I'll tell you more about it, but I wasn't able to use this card in that exact scenario. But it also doubles up as a pretty good card going first, specifically into shifter matchups, such as Fluwandereeze or Kashtira. It's also really good into Tempai because of their field spell. And it's a thrust target as well. So I feel like it fit a lot of niche categories, but its main design point was to solve the turn 3 Zealantis OTK from the Snake Eyes player. Finally, I have the remaining 6 cards of my side deck pretty much dedicated to utility cards. And I'm going to go through them now, and they're pretty unconventional. So I play 1 Diabelzi in the side. So I know all the Branded Chimera players are basically, or all the Chimera players overall are basically raving about how great this card is. And I totally agree. This card is completely broken going first. The floodgate effect is very, very powerful. However, this card is one that completely overperforms when it goes first, and it does absolutely nothing for you going second. So I found myself never making this card a single time when I was going second, even though it's technically removal via its pop. And even going first, I try not to. I try to use my Tau and my Berfomets in order to dodge hand traps, as opposed to going for this card. So this was a card that I could only make going first in a best of all world situation where my opponent had no hand traps, and going second, I never used it. And so I basically put it in the side deck because I didn't think it had enough utility. In the side deck, it would come in for matchups that relied on quick play spells a lot, or if I thought they were going to board into a lot of board breakers. So specifically, this was something for a purely runic variants. As well, it really does a lot in the Chimera mirror match. Okay. Also played one Barrier Statue of the Abyss, Darklock. This went in for Snake Eyes mostly. I also played the Archfiend Eris and the Simul Archfiend. So this is a Foolish Burial target that you can send with Branded Fusion or the Big Wing Berfomet Fusion. And on send to graveyard, it's going to search the Simul Archfiends. This Simul Archfiends package only went in against Tempai and Branded Despia. For this tournament, I'm only going to talk about the Tempai matchup because I never played against Branded Despia, although I did use this in testing versus Branded Despia, and it worked very well as well. In the Tempai matchup, regardless of how game 1 goes, you're always going to go first in games 2 and 3, and you're going to prioritize getting this to the graveyard. You bait all their hand traps with either the Branded half or the Chimera half of your deck, and then the other half of the deck is going to Foolish Burial this via Branded Fusion or via the Berfomet Fusion. You're going to search the Simul Archfiends, shotgun this in draw phase, and the Tempai player cannot OTK you through this card. It's going to prevent them from synchro climbing pretty much. If you do this, you're guaranteed to get that turn 3 where you can basically reverse OTK. And this was a silver bullet every single time I played against Tempai, both in my home locals and in the tournament. The last 2 cards I have here are time cards. Over the course of the week, I have been able to get the actual versions of them. So I have one Barbar, Malebranche of the Burning Abyss, and one Graph, Malebranche of the Burning Abyss. So this is a time card for one particular situation. In general, this deck doesn't struggle much with time because we have Masquerade, the Tax Dragon. However, there is a situation where you can't use Masquerade to actually win in time. And that's basically when you're going first in game 3 and time is called on your main phase 1. You're not going to be able to force your opponent to perform any actions. So I was looking for a tech package that could be used as a time card, and I stumbled on Graph and Barbar. So what you can do with the 2 engines to your deck, you can send Graph either via Branded Fusion because it's a dark, or via the Big Wing Berfomet Fusion because it's a fiend. And then on send to graveyard, it's going to special summon Barbar from the deck. Barbar is going to trigger and immediately destroy itself due to the fact that there is another monster on the field. And then it's going to meet its graveyard trigger, where it can banish the Graph from your graveyard and inflict 300 points of burn damage to your opponent, therefore winning in the main phase 1. Okay. So that's it for the deck profile. Next, I'm going to move on to the round matchups. Okay, and we are moving on to the match report. So I have all of this written down here. I think you should be able to see it. So basically, what was this? This was the Los Angeles Regionals on June 8th, 2024. I finished in the top 8th, 6th place overall out of a total of 507 plus late registration players. So I'm guesstimating somewhat close to 600. For those of you who know, that's actually pretty small for Los Angeles Regionals. But overall, like I said in the intro, it's one of the larger regionals overall. Okay, so I have a major caveat for this round report. I did not play against any Snake Eyes in the Swiss 9 rounds, which is kind of crazy, frankly. I know when I'm watching deck profiles, I care to know about what the matchups were to basically sort of see like how valid. I mean, maybe it's a little rude, but I kind of use it to see how valid wins are. And frankly, if I see a regionals and you didn't play against any Snake Eyes in a tier 0 format, I kind of feel like it's a little less valid. On the other hand, you know, I can only play the duelists that were put in front of me, and I did win, 8 out of 9 rounds, certainly against people who had also very good records. So basically, I'm leaving it up to the audience. If you think it's invalid because I didn't play any Snake Eyes, I kind of get where you're coming from. At the same time, hopefully you still get a lot of value out of understanding the deck building and the thought process. And just know that I tested against Snake Eyes really extensively leading up to the tournament. Okay. So overall record 8-1. Round 1 was versus Drytron Voiceless Voice. I lost the die roll. I lost game 1. I simply wasn't able to push through their end board. Even though their end board was pretty mid, I opened a lot of the bricks in my deck and just couldn't force my way through. Game 2, I went first. It was an overwhelming victory. Game 3, I got deburied. I couldn't force it, and I lost in Game 3. Round 2, I won the die roll. I had an easy win in Game 1. And then Game 2, I got deburied, but I countered with an evenly matched and ended up winning by the time turn 4 rolled around. I was in complete control of the duel. Round 3, I lost the die roll, but it was versus Tenpai. I lost Game 1. They had 2 key hand traps, and I couldn't outextend that. Games 2 and 3, I won pretty handedly using the Archfiend and the Simul Archfiends, putting me at 2-1 record. Round 4, I played against Voiceless Voice. I won the die roll. I won Game 1, even though they hand trapped me 4 times, and I basically passed with nothing. In Game 2, I won as well, even though I was deburied going second. I somehow managed to survive that, and on turn 4, I resolved the Branded Fusion that basically got me so far ahead in the game that I was able to win out. Round 5, I lost the die roll versus Tenpai. I lost Game 1 when my opponent had 3 hand traps. And Game 2 and Game 3, I won pretty handily again with the Simul Archfiend package, putting me to 4-1. Round 6, I played against Voiceless Voice. I won the die roll. Game 1, I won in somewhat convincing fashion. Game 2 was a complete blowout. They went as wide as possible with the Voiceless Voice engine, and then I had Dark Ruler evenly matched in my opening 5, so that was over really quickly. Round 7, I played against Ashen, and at that point, we're both 5-1, which is kind of crazy to me. He was really shocked that he got that far, and I didn't know what any of the cards did, so I was trying to pay as much respect as possible and read everything. Game 1, I got to basically full combo, and it was pretty much a convincing win. Game 2 was a little awkward. He had a Rivalry of Warlords plus a Vados that he could put on my side of the field, locking me into Pyro monsters. And so I made a play where I tribute set a Nightmare Apprentice, made a Guardian Chimera to pop the Rivalry, and then I used the Baphomet that I fused with out of my hand to Monster Reborn, the Nightmare Apprentice, which got me to an Illusion, which got me back to the Chimera engine. I was able to basically OTK from there. Round 8, I played against Vanadium. I won the die roll. Game 1, I won pretty quickly. Game 2, I lost, and it was similar to Game 1 in my round 1. I had a really mid hand. I'd opened a decent amount of bricks or no branded or Chimera names. I pretty much opened like non-engine plus Fusion Deployment and Cartesia and Patchwork. And so I couldn't really get anything going until it was too late. Game 3, I played around some hand traps and won pretty convincingly. And finally, round 9 was versus Dinomorphia, which was quite shocking. I want to give this guy some credit because I know a lot of people are going to see Dinomorphia here and be like, how the hell did that happen? And I know for a fact this player beat a professional in round 1 and basically had a run at top tables all day long. I was hearing everywhere from about the Dinomorphia player. So definitely give respect to that, even if it's a bit of a rogue deck that you see in round 9. Game 1, I won the die roll, and I won pretty handily. He normal summoned Theresia. I negated the search. He set 3. I made a Guardian Chimera, popped 2, and then I also made a Magnum in his main phase and popped the last remaining set. Game 2, he was able to full combo. I had an evenly matched, and then after that, in my main phase 2, I set up a Masquerade as well as dealt with his monsters, and then Masquerade is just an FTK versus Dinomorphia. And so overall, the round, I finished 8-1. My only loss was in round 1. I lost a total of 5 duels over the course of the day out of my 9 matches. I lost 3 game 1s and 2 game 2s overall. So, take away from that what you will. Like I said, I have the same caveat about Snake Eyes, but hopefully this was helpful for getting you a better flavor of what the actual duels were. Great. Thank you all for taking the time to watch my deck profile today. I hope it was helpful and informative, and I was able to cover in detail the various deck building decisions that I made. Whether you agree or disagree with the various card choices, I hope you understand the rationale after my explanations, and it can help you going forward in your own deck building and play style. I want to take this time to send out some acknowledgements real quick. I'd like to thank James from Hakuna My Data for featuring a shorter version of this deck profile on his channel, where he has a lot more reach, obviously. So if you came to this video after seeing it on his channel, thank you for being here. And I hope that you want to stick around. I'd also like to thank and acknowledge the local San Diego Yu-Gi-Oh community where I play the majority of my locals. It's a fantastic community and they've really helped me grow and get a lot better at Yu-Gi-Oh since I've been living there. I also want to thank my closer knit Yu-Gi-Oh friend group who spent a long time practicing with me and going over metagame theory in the week leading up to the tournament and helped me overall to prepare quite a bit. Lastly, I want to also give some acknowledgement and credit to Nicholas, I believe his last name might be Popoulos, for posting a 60 card branded Chimera deck on the Chimera Facebook page. It is the original inspiration for this 60 card build that I've been playing. And in fact, since I saw that deck list about half a year ago, it was a France regional winning deck list or top cut deck list. I've been playing it pretty much exclusively to a tremendous amount of success in my local scene. Yeah, so thank you all for watching this video. If you really like the video, please give it a like. If you like my presentation style and like what you saw on this channel, please consider giving a subscription. And yeah, hope to see you next time. Cheers.